Hey, what's up, guys? Welcome to Rules of Engagement. This is a tactical analysis show, as you can see from the little intro video we just put together for you guys. Today's episode is going to be community critique, but let's go over a quick breakdown of the weekly schedule first. So every Monday we have Talking Tactics, where we take a look at pro games and look at the tactics they use in their games. Tuesday, Developing Fundamentals. We go over the very basics of the game. Great if you're kind of stuck and your gameplay is not quite where you want it to be at. Maybe you're missing a couple key fundamentals, or maybe you have a friend who you want to bring into StarCraft. Throw them over this show. Wednesday, we got Mechanics of the Bizarre. That's where we look, again, at professional level games, but we look at builds where they do something a little bit funky, a little bit creative, a little bit off the wall, and we can see why it worked for them in that game, why maybe they don't use it all the time. And then, of course, today is Thursday. This is Community Critique. This is where you guys at home send me the replays that you want to be looked at. You can submit them at majorleaguegaming.com/replays. It's a pretty painless process, only takes a few seconds. And then, of course, you get the pleasure of potentially seeing a replay up here on Thursday. So let's actually get into exactly which replays we're going to look at on Thursday. We're going to start off with a late game PVZ. It's going to be Protoss Stunnergy versus Empyrean Light. Then we're going to go on to the Ninja Push ZVT, Sinvicta versus D-Select. That's not the real Select. It's just a diamond player. Opening with Planetary Fortress TVZ. That's going to be Terran. It's going to be Victor versus Virus. And then, of course, we're going to end the show with a question and answer period. Submit your questions to @ISAxLav. And, of course, we'll answer those at the end of the show. So go ahead throughout the entire show, or even when the show's not going on, you can just tweet the questions and I'll answer them at the next show if it's, too late for this one. So without further ado, let's talk about the first replay we're going into, the PVZ late game that was sent to me. So a couple things about this game is, first, let's talk about where we're at right now in the game. So a Protoss player has eliminated almost all the Zerg bases with having a large army, and then a Zerg player wins the game with Broodlord Infestor push. He's saying he could learn from the mistakes of Protoss player once having a lead on their opponent. I think that's what this stands for. At this point, let's actually get just right into the game here. And this is the point we're on Daybreak. And at this point, it's been a basic open. Protoss is on 3 bases. He got there playing pretty standardly. Nothing crazy has gone on. Very, very passive game from both sides. And the first thing I want to talk about here is the macro from the Protoss player. Is that, even for both players, but we're going to focus on the Protoss player for this episode. It's 17-15 minutes and nothing has happened. And he's not even quite maxed yet. So that's definitely pretty much... If you want to improve, it's always going to be getting probes more efficiently. So he definitely wants to max out the latest by like 15 minutes if nothing else is going on in the game. So that's the biggest area to improve, because obviously if you're maxed 2 minutes earlier, you just win the game 2 minutes ago, because the Zerg player is going to be 130 in this game. But then, of course, you'll be playing a higher league. So that's always the non sequitur about how to improve your play. But the more interesting things that can help everyone, and the general tactical knowledge, is what we're really going to go over. And so we're going to start with the War Prism usage, because that's what late game PVZ is really orientated around. If you're not doing some air composition, it's going to be about the War Prism usage. So if you're going to use the War Prism, there's a couple ways you want to use it. All right, one is in combining with another threat, which is right here. We can see there's a War Prism in the main, right? And then there's also another threat, which is the army pushing towards the Zerg's 4th base. So that's a great way to use the War Prism, because the Zerg now has to respond on 2 fronts. They send their whole army back to deal with the War Prism, right? Then, of course, this push in the front will cause some damage. If you respond to the push in the front like he's doing right now, the push can go well or poorly. Who knows? That's all down to micro and of course, the size of the armies. But he's busy responding to this push. And he is looking like he's going to defend it with the Spine Core wall and plenty of Infestor energy. But meanwhile, his Hive's going to die. So this is the ideal way to use War Prisms in combination with another threat. Now there's one other way to use them. So he's killed the Hive, right? And now you could say maybe the Protoss player could be considered slightly ahead at this point. He's going to be on 4 base to 3 base, now that the main's gone. And the Zerg player has lost a very important tech building, and he's still taking even more damage in his main. Protoss is probably just going to retreat with this army at this point. So let's fast forward to the next section, where we see some more War Prism action. So the other way to use War Prisms is to buy time. So we're here, the game's both players just passively macroing up again. And all of a sudden the Protoss player is saying, you know what? I need to get more tech in my army. So I'm going to get Templar Archives to get Storm. Some little bit of Zerging harass there. And then I'm going to follow that up by starting to work towards a Mothership eventually, right? But while he's doing that, what's going to stop the Zerg player from sending this giant Broodlord Infestor army across the map and killing him? This is, again, the use of the War Prism. So we have one War Prism at the bottom, right here. And it's going to come in, then one War Prism at the top. He's actually just canceled a hatchery that I was building up at the top left, or maybe even killed it. And this threat means that the Zerg player leaves his base, the War Prisms can jump in here and do even more damage, right? They can overwhelm the spines with just mass cell War Pins. It can come into main. Then once it's into main, it could hit the natural as well. So it kind of, in effect, it helps keep the Zerg pinned back just a little bit, and it buys time. So that's the other reason you can use War Prisms. And so far, everything's going very, very well for the Protoss player using War Prisms to a very large effect. If we just go forward a little bit more, then we're going to see all of a sudden, right now, he can use War Prisms again, not only to buy time, but in combination with another threat, right? In this case, he's using a War Prism here. He's combining it with the threat of a War Prism up here. Actually, he just sent in some Zealots over the third. So he's doing multiple threats, and then, of course, the army is still within striking distance of the natural. So the Zerg player doesn't react perfectly with how they split their army. All of a sudden, the Protoss player can get extra damage done, ahead of their opponent. We can actually see that happening right here. As soon as the Zerg player responds to War Prism down here, then all of a sudden the other threat, the even bigger threat, strikes at the Zerg's fourth. A few spines can delay the army, but it's not going to delay it for very long. Protoss player can go straight for this hatchery, knock it out, and this is one of the Zerg's most important mining bases because it's the one that has very, very healthy minerals on it, right? As opposed to, of course, the main is almost gone, the natural is almost gone, and the third is very low as well. So he killed the most important Zerg mining base by combining the War Prism with another threat. So this is it's all looking really, really great, and this is exactly how you want to play late game PvZ, except for one key factor, right? And the key factor is you're doing great annoying the Zerg, hitting their economy, keeping them from killing you, but you still want to actually do something to improve your position, right? Which is your army development. This Protoss army is one that you might see at the 13-minute point of a game. I mean, it wouldn't be max 13 minutes, but it's just Stalkers and Colossi. I mean, 2 Archons don't really do anything in there. So it's basically just Stalkers and Colossi. The army has stopped developing basically 10 minutes ago. So that's the one thing we need to keep in mind is the army development, because the Zerg army is all of a sudden, it's the ideal Zerg army, right? It's a ton of Broodlords, 15 Broodlords, accompanied by 14 Infestors. That's a huge late-game Zerg army. And the Protoss, it just has this like late mid-game type army. So this is really where you have to take a step back and think of the position you're in. Okay, the position you're in is that right now he's actually going for a game-deciding engagement. Right, he's about to engage the Zerg army, and if you put your basically all your marbles are in this army, and all the Zerg's marbles are in this army, right? So whoever wins the battle will most likely continue to win the game. I mean, if it's a very close battle, people could recover, but it looks like it's going to be a game-deciding engagement. So if we bring up the army values, we can look at something here. The Protoss army value is about 3,000 less in both resources. It's about 65%, I think, somewhere like that, of the Zerg army in total value. So you don't really want to fight a game-deciding engagement when they have basically 50% more units than you. That's not really advisable at all. So the thing you have to think about here is also how much damage has a Protoss done to the Zerg, right? He's killed the top left base, so that's 4 base to 4 base, so that's not even really an advantage. It just equalizes things. But he's also reset a lot of the tech. There's no hive there. The infestation pit is just being rebuilt. This is still a lair, it's not a hive, so if you kill the Greater Spire, even more head. And then look at the mining. Actually, the Zerg's only on 3 base. Sorry, not 4. And the Zerg's 3 bases, this is long distance mining. And this base is basically almost mined out. So the Protoss has done an amazing job of destroying the Zerg economy. If we look at the income graph, 3 times the current economy, and that'll actually get worse because these bases will mine out pretty soon. Actually, he's not even mining from there, so it actually won't get that much worse because he can move all the drones over here. We'll mine more. But then as soon as this base mines out, it's gonna get really bad for the Zerg. So the Zerg has the ideal army right here, and we can look at the army size; it's very big, but no economy. So Zerg cannot improve their position at a decent rate because their army can't get any better. They can slowly grow their economy, but it's not going to go that fast. The Protoss has a massive economy, but the Protoss only has a mid-game army, right? So what this means is that Protoss needs to buy time. Okay, this is a situation where you really need to buy time. You do not want to fight a game-deciding engagement. That's exactly what the Zerg wants to do. And this is where the War Prism usage to do more counteracts to buy time while you build a mothership. There should be mothership being built there. And then, of course, also while you get some storm in your army. And then this is the question, well, he's at 200 food. How can he develop his army? So we're going to look at the map and look at a couple different options he has to basically trade away units without suiciding and without leaving himself open for the Zerg to really come in and clean them out. So let's say the Protoss player is going to be, his army right now is right here, right? This is where the Protoss player is. He's purple for the Protoss player. And the Zerg player, we're going to go to blue for the Zerg. The Zerg player's army is right here. So they're both pretty much close to each other. This is not what you want as a Protoss player. What you want to do is you want to have your army separated into several different groups because you're trying to basically buy time and trade off small groups of units. So what you should do is you should basically send a small squadron of Blink Stalkers up here, right? Actually, it could even go all the way up here. And then you have little circles of Blink Stalkers there. And then you should have another little small squadron, maybe a little bit bigger squadron right here, right? So if the Zerg ever moves out, all of a sudden you have these potentials where you can strike at so many different angles. Then, of course, you also want your Warp Prism over here. And you probably want another Warp Prism either back here or maybe up here. And all of a sudden, wherever the Zerg goes, they either have to split their army up exceptionally well, or they're going to leave vulnerabilities unless they keep their army back at home. So right now the Zerg's camping basically their last possible mining spot. There's no hatchery there at the moment, but they will eventually put one there. And you want to do everything but the Zerg wants there to be, you know, a back and forth battle across here, right? This is we're going to put a lot of X's here because this is not where you want to go. Because that's where you're going to fighting the Zerg, which is exactly what the Zerg wants to do. And then meanwhile, while you're buying time, you're getting money here, you're getting money here, and then hopefully you're taking this expansion down here. And then all of a sudden you're getting tons of money, and that Zerg player there is really not getting much at all in the way of money. So as time goes on, you can continue to develop your army, and you'll be in a very, very good position. That's really basically the turning point of the game. And we're actually going to jump back in the game really quickly. Let's jump back there. And now we're at the position where the Protoss player is not spreading his army out and trading off small groups of stalkers on little hit and run missions. Instead, he's going to run in here and just try to fight this Zerg Doomball, right? And, I mean, you blink in, you kill one or two Brood Lords. There's not even really any Infestor micro being done. Now a few Infested Terrans, but no Fungals. But, I mean, in a battle like this, without a mothership, without, you know, a lot of support, there's not even a need for fungal growth, really. I mean, you can pick off a couple Brood Lords. Upgrades are good, but you're still going to lose end to end. And then as soon as you lose your army, right, this is a game-deciding battle. You're going to basically continue to lose the game, especially the Zerg's doing a nice little counterattack here. And it definitely does not help matters anymore, because as soon as you lose this space, all of a sudden the economy is basically reset. Now it's even. So now not only are you still way behind in army supply, but you don't have that economic advantage too. So it would have been better to keep your army back here, your main army, and then put a little squadron over here, little squadron over here, and then the Warp Prisms actually were really well placed, right? You can already be doing some significantly more damage here. Killing these gases is really huge. So this is basically the error here was a tactical error of not realizing the position, where you're buying all this time, right? But the Protoss player bought time to do a timing attack, which is something that strategically makes no sense, right? Let's back up a tiny bit so you can see the position he's in, right? He's bought a whole bunch of time to keep the Zerg player off him, and then with that time, he's launching a timing attack with a low-tech army. And if you think about where you're doing buying time with all these War Prism harasses, is one, you're making sure you can't die, and then two, you're trading army for their economy. A timing attack is where you basically put all the marbles, not all the marbles, but you basically you get it into an army versus army battle. If you want to do a timing attack, you want to basically have the strongest army possible, which means you don't want to spend any units buying time. You don't want to waste any bits of your army buying time, because then you're losing your army and you're not really killing much of theirs. So what you want to do is you want to actually do this timing attack, but do it 10 minutes ago, right? If you're doing a timing attack, you just want to put all your units in your army, go and kill them. If you're buying time, that means you should be developing to a super late tech ultra composition. You want your Storms, your Mothership, maybe even some air switch units, or at least continue to harass them to death. You can't really buy time to do a time attack because that's extremely kind of strategically counterintuitive, I guess. Or it's counterintuitive if you game theory it out. It's not counterintuitive to a layperson. But that's the thing to take away here, is that basically that fact, right? You don't want to buy time, then do a time attack. If you're buying time, you go for late game composition. If you're doing a time attack, you want them to not buy time, so you want to just go and kill them. So we're going to take a quick break after this segment, and we're going to get into the Ninja Push ZVT. It's a fun mixture of Queens and Ultralists that was submitted.